Hi everyone. I will begin a presentation of Flavio Percoco about OpenStack, a pure Python community developed IaaS implementation. Thank you. Please switch off your phones and enjoy.
Okay. Hello everyone. Can you hear me? Thanks for that. So this talk is about OpenStack. This is more technical talk than the ones we already heard today. Well, the first we heard today. I'm going to try to get into OpenStack itself, what OpenStack is, how we're developing it, and what the community is like around OpenStack, so why it is succeeding today. So, like I said, today's talk is all about OpenStack. It's about what it is, it's about how it's being developed, the community around it, and about engaging you, all of you, to contribute to it and becoming part of this amazing project, amazing community, and being part of this change we are making right now. A little bit about me. I'm a very proud Red Hatter, part of the MongoDB Masters team as well, although many people is ranting around MongoDB right now, but it's pretty cool. I'm one of those guys really passionate that always thinks about programming when he's not programming, and I'm also part of RDO, which is the Red Hat community behind OpenStack. So we're making sure OpenStack works perfectly in every single Rails-based distribution. So you can trust all Rails-based distributions, get OpenStack running on it, and just use it. So let me tell you what OpenStack is. The part just above is what marketers read about OpenStack. It's a really cool project that will increase your revenues and all that kind of stuff. But from a developer point of view, OpenStack is a really cool pure Python open source infrastructure, and not just infrastructure, because we have also other applications that are not actual infrastructure as a service provider. So these are the main models. You might already have heard about them. I'm going to walk through them very quickly. The first one, and I guess the most important ones, because that's the one that makes all virtual machines work, is the compute model, which code name is Nova. It basically handles the whole virtualization part of OpenStack. It handles the communication between the hypervisor and all other OpenStack models. There's OpenStack Image, which provides images to Nova. So every time Nova needs to build a new virtual machine, it asks to glance to give you a base image, and it builds a new virtual machine from that image. There's block storage, which is in there. It handles all around block devices like NAS, SAN, GlosserFS, Ceph, everything that has to be with block devices. So you can mount them in every single virtual machine and use them as another directory, let's say that. There's Swift, which we already heard about it today. It's block storage, so you can just put files in there and just like S3. And I never said that. There's Neutron, formerly known as Quantum. We had to change the name because there were some trademarks issue with it, so we need to call it Neutron now. And it handles everything about networking. So DHCP, layer 2, layer 3, and all around that, which I'm not really expert at. There's Horizon, which is the dashboard. It's a really nice UI that you can use to manage a whole OpenStack infrastructure just in a web-based application. There's Ceilometer, which is the metering model. This handles the whole stats collection all around OpenStack, so that you can actually build clients based on what Ceilometer says, like how much CPU some client is using, how much network some client is using, storage or whatever. The identity service, which handles all the authentication process of OpenStack. I think it has two-step authentication right now, but they are working on having other plugins that you can use, like OAuth and other stuff. I think they have some Kerberos-based authentication as well. I'm not pretty sure about that. And there's orchestration as well. It's basically what CloudFormation is. It just allows you to easily build a whole infrastructure based on a single template. Like you say, in a template you define how your service should look like. You say like this first server should be like have this operating system and these models and that kind of stuff. So it takes that template and it builds the whole infrastructure for you. It's a really nice project. So all these projects here are integrated projects. That means they all passed incubation. So they're all, they respect the whole release cycle of OpenStack. So every 6 months, we have a new release of every single project. Well, except for Swift. It has its own release cycle. I don't understand that, but it has its own release cycle. So anyway, so they're all integrated projects. There are also other projects that are not integrated, but might be incubated, like DNS as a service, like database as a service. There's a bunch of people working on those projects, but those projects have to pass through the incubation process. So like getting into the whole OpenStack workflow and getting into using the whole bunch of tools we're using to develop all these projects so they can respect the whole release cycle and become part of OpenStack itself. So now let me share a little bit about how it's being developed. There's snakes everywhere. This is pure Python software, right? So it's like 500% written in Python and some small, not relevant percent of web stuff. And that web stuff is all around the horizon. So they have some CSS and JavaScript, obviously, and HTML. But it's all written in Python. It's actually not a rule. I mean, it's not like you cannot propose from a new project based in other languages I'm not going to name here. But you could, but I'm not pretty sure it's going to be that successful because there's a really huge community behind OpenStack right now. And they are all Python developers. I'm not saying they don't know other languages, but most likely they know Python very well. So if you want to get more contributors, if you want to get more people contributing to your project, it's Python or Burst. That's the way. OpenStack is non-opinionated. And by non-opinionated, I mean that every single model, every single project is being developed in a plugin fashion way, which means that, for example, Nova needs to handle all the hypervisor communication, right? So, but it's not tied to a single hypervisor. It's not tied to KVM. It can handle communication. I mean, it has plugins for KVM, for VMware, for Hyper-V, and any other hypervisor that other private companies would like to have support to, right? So it's non-opinionated. Same thing happens for Cinder, for example. It supports NetApp, it supports EMC Square or whatever other brand you want support for, right? So it's completely non-opinionated. We are not developing stuff for a single brand, for a single company. That's not the way OpenStack works. OpenStack works in a way that you build a whole infrastructure, you build a tool that allows you to use specific hardware, specific hardware in a really cool way, like creating plugins so that you can maintain those. And once you create those, you can just release them and they will most likely get into the code base and other folks will contribute back to it as well. It's also being developed in a shared nothing architecture. Shared nothing architecture, I don't know if you are familiar with it, it's very common in distributed systems. It means that every single node, every single model of your whole infrastructure is capable of being isolated from other models. They don't share anything. They don't share memory, they don't share storage, they don't share anything. Every single model is capable of working itself and making everything by himself, right, by itself. So the idea about this is being able to scale out as fast as possible and as easy as possible, right? We do code reviews. We do code reviews, a lot of code reviews. Most of the time we'll talk about core contributors and that kind of stuff later. But we do code reviews a lot. Most of the time that we spend in OpenStack right now is doing code reviews, like getting patches from other folks and contributing to the work they're doing and saying like this should be the other way or this is totally cool, we should definitely have this. And making sure that the code base is as stable as possible and that everything that gets in there makes sense, or at least makes sense. It doesn't happen all the time, but most of the time, yeah. So it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, how many cats you have, that we don't care about that stuff. You might be whoever you want to be, I mean, the most smart guy in the world. If you submit a patch, that patch is going to be reviewed, right? Because that's the way it should be. So we don't have core committers. We just have core contributors. So nobody can commit anywhere. When you do something, when you contribute to a single project, we use Git, obviously. So you don't use git push or git commit. You just do Git review, right? Well, you use Git commit, but you do Git review. Git review means that your patch, your single patch or series of patches are going to be submitted to Gary, and a bunch of folks are going to review those patches. And if they approve those, which means approving means that 2 core contributors agree with what you just submitted, and they say, okay, this looks good, I approve this patch, your patch is going to get into the code base. That's how it works. No pushes, no rebases, nothing, just reviews. We use Jenkins for continuous integration, so every time you submit a new patch, and it gets into Gary, there are a bunch of jobs that are running under the hood, and they check many stuff, like PEP 8 compliancy, so if your code is not PEP 8 compliant, it won't get in. And that makes it really easier for us that are reviewing those patches, because if your code is not PEP 8 compliant, it will tell us that, and we're just not going to review that patch until it's PEP 8 compliant. It does it runs every single unit test. We have a very, very tight test-driven development, so we really take care of that. We want every single patch to have a test with it. So if it doesn't have a test, it's not, unless it's just documentation, right? But if it doesn't have a test, it's not going to get in, most likely. So it runs every single unit test, and it also runs some functional tests, like the whole environment using DevStack that Shmuel named before. It just takes DevStack and installs the whole OpenStack infrastructure in a server and runs every single test for every single application and makes sure it doesn't break. We use GitHub, but GitHub for us is just our public repository, right? It's not our main repository. Our main repository, our master repository is actually in some server somewhere in the world, I guess in America, in HP Cloud, I guess. And it gets replicated to GitHub. So GitHub is not our main repository. We don't commit there. So that's part of why we don't use commits, and we don't use pushes at all. We just use Git review, and those patches get into our master repository, which is replicated here. So if you want to get the code, you can definitely go there. I mean, you should definitely go there, download the code using Git or Tarballs or whatever. You can download the code, change stuff in it, and submit new reviews, right? We don't even have good readmes there. If you want to get a good documentation or something, you have to go to docs.openstack.org. We don't even have good documentation there, seriously. We use Launchpad. To be honest, I don't know why. It's just started there. I think they were using Bazaar before.
It's historical, yeah, because many of the folks who kickstarted OpenStack,
they were using Launch.
Yeah, they're using it and came.
It was easy
Okay.
to base ourselves on.
Yeah, it was. No, just kidding. Yeah, jokes apart. Launchpad makes some things easier and other very, very complicated. Some of the stuff that, well, it has bug issues. I mean, you can create issues there, and you can create blueprints. And
If we don't use Bazaar.
yeah, as long as we don't use Bazaar, that's fine. I mean, that would be the end of the world. Just OpenStack would fail. Okay. So we use Launchpad for bug reports. So every time you find something in the code, I mean, something that doesn't work, or documentation or whatever, even documentation, if there's a typo, just go there, create a new issue, and we will take care of that, or maybe you as well can take care of that. We use Launchpad for blueprints as well. Blueprints are just ideas, changes to projects that you might have, and you want to share it with other folks and get some feedback from that. And this is how we track new features. So every time somebody wants to add something to the project, it goes there, creates a new blueprint, and say, hey, I created this blueprint. Does it make sense to have this in this release cycle or the next one? And the whole process, the whole approval of those blueprints happens in meetings and design summits, and we will talk about that later. But yeah, that's basically what we use Launchpad for. We have teams there, like for tracking who's core developer and who's a core contributor in every single project. But it's basically that. That's why we use Launchpad. We also have this Oslo incubator. Oslo incubator is not actually a tool. It's just another project we have in OpenStack. The reason why I wanted to add this here is because we get many people asking why Oslo. I mean, it doesn't make sense. but it actually does. So let me explain you what Oslo is. Oslo Incubator is a normal project on GitHub, or in our code base, let's call it like that, that is meant to incubate new models, new common code between OpenStack. So OpenStack is a really huge project. And as every single huge project, it has common code, right? We have many projects, and those projects share some code, like database access code, like JSON utils, like time utils, str utils, or many other code, right? So we don't want to repeat ourselves. So in order to avoid that, we had to create this Oslo Incubator for a couple of reasons. The first reason is that this is the place where all that common code goes, and it's the place where we can make sure the API of that code makes sense. So that when some project is using it, and then we have to change that API, we are actually not breaking the whole project, right? So we allow projects, using Oslo Incubator, we allow projects to migrate more easily, right, from a version of that model to another one. So you might say, yeah, but you could use just X or just create a package and put it on Python, right? Yeah, you could do that, and all projects could have that in their requirements file, and every time you install that project, a JSON utils model, also a JSON utils model would be installed, and that's fine. The bad thing happens when you try to change that API and you increase the version, and you say like, right, but you could pin the version in the requirements file. So when you're installing that project, you just have a pinned version of that model, and you say like Nova needs JSON utils 0.1 and Cinder needs JSON utils 0.2, and that's fine. But again, things get worse if you want to install all of them in the same environment. So since Python doesn't have a good way to have multiple versions of the same project in
Susurro, susurro. Okay.
Quando gli hai preso la clip. We have a very active mailing list, so if folks want to participate, even though they just...
Sorry, I choose this one.
I need to move my hands. That's it. Hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me? Okay, I'm now one-handed. So, it's bad for me. I'm Italian. I need to move my hands. Okay. That's so bad for me. So anyway, yeah, we have an open community, so you can just be part of that community and speak up every time you want, every time you think you have something to say. And even though if you just got there, even though if you just sign up in the mailing list, or if you just got into IRC and you want to contribute, you want to say your thoughts about the community itself, the projects all around, or the design summits, you just do it, right? That's very, very, very much appreciated. We want that. We want people to be part of OpenStack. We want people to contribute to it and making it better every single day. But we do have project technical leads. Project technical leads is we do, sorry. We have project technical leads. Project technical leads is one guy responsible of keeping track of a specific release cycle and keeping track of all the changes happening in every single project, right? In a single project, sorry. So Nova has its PDL, Glance have a PTL, Cinder has a PDL, and so on. Those PDLs are elected by the active contributors, so every single release, when a release happens, new PTLs are elected for the next release cycle. And it's not a dictator, right? It's not that the PTL is going to say that your blueprint is not getting it because I don't like it, right? No, it's not like that. So for approving blueprints and changes and bugs, we always have meetings where you can participate and say what you think and making sure that your opinions is being heard and that people takes care of that, right? So PDLs will take your opinion into consideration and the whole community will accept or will contribute like in the whole process of accepting blueprints and making sure that the blueprints that are going to get into the next release cycle make sense for that release cycle. So for example, in Glass right now, we want to make Glance going public. So all the release, all the blueprints we accepted for this release are around that topic, about making Glance as a public service. That's another topic, but it's just an example of how things work. How blueprints are being accepted in OpenStack. Yeah, that's the number of contributors we have, right? So if you go to openstack.org, you will see that number. And that means it's the number of people that are part of the community somehow, coding, participating in mailing lists, just signing up, and whatever. They are from 87 different countries, and that number keeps growing.
So 19 to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Who want to be the 10,000? The community is awesome because the community is always there. OpenStack community, since it's that huge, you will always find someone. If you need something, you just get into IRC and you will always find someone. We are always there. If you need something, there's channels for each project. There's a general channel. There's a 101 channel. There's a development channel. So we're always there. Every time you need something, just jump in there and ask. Somebody will answer. That's for sure. We have regular meetings, as I said, every single week, once per week, every single project have a meeting. So you can just chime in and say what you think and making sure that you are contributing and that stuff is getting done. We have a very, very active mailing list. Keeping track and catch up with that mailing list is really difficult, trust me. Right, you don't have to read all threads, right? There are threads for every single project, but we have a single mailing list for all projects, so you just imagine how many mails you can get there. But you can also filter those. If you don't care about Nova or any other projects, you can filter those in the mailing list subscription. Yeah, it's topic. We have topics in the mailing list. We also have basically Hello? Oh. Okay, it works. So, it's funny. Okay, anyway. Oh, this is better. I'm free. So we have a technical committee. Technical committee takes care of obviously taking decisions about the technical aspects of OpenStack itself, like release cycles, like changing the number of the people allowed into the technical committee, for example, creating new programs instead of projects. They are the ones that accept projects for incubation. They're the ones that evaluate all the process and make sure OpenStack is going in the right way. That doesn't mean that you cannot chime in. I mean, if you want to chime in and say your word and say like, I don't agree with this or I do agree with this, that you are free to do that. I mean, it's not that you have to be part of the technical committee to actually speak at the technical committee. You're free to do that. The thing is that those people that are actually part of the technical committee, they wanted that, right? So they have the time to be there and they want to be there. Sorry, so some takeaways about this talk. First of all, it's like OpenStack is, again, I know I've said this many times, but OpenStack is a really, really huge project. And the reason why it exists right now is obviously thanks to NASA and Rackspace that created it a long time ago, but so far it's been maintained by the community itself. So it's completely developed and maintained by the community. Yes, there's a foundation behind it, but someone has to take care of the whole legal stuff, right? And I don't want to do that. And the community doesn't want to do that. I'm pretty sure about that, right? So that's basically why the foundation is there. So somebody has to take care about that stuff. But community matters. The community itself is making sure this project succeeds. Drop your ego. That's really, I don't know, for some people it's really hard to do that. Since every single patch, every single word you say is going to be reviewed, and somebody will chime in and like say like, no, I don't agree with you. Don't take it personal. Just chill out and just assume good faith. That's kind of our motto, right? Every time you go there and every time you go to review some patches and somebody writes to your patch something or replies to your email, just assume good faith. Nobody's trying to make you look like stupid or something, right? So we're just trying to make sure the project succeeds, and we're trying to make sure the code gets into the code base, it makes sense, and is stable enough to keep other deployments stable, right? Do many reviews. Since there are that many contributors, there are so much more reviews to do. So if you have some free time, some spare time, and you want to start contributing to OpenStack, a good way to do that, and it is not because we have a huge backlog, but if you want to contribute, you can just go to review.openstack.org and help us to do reviews. That's very, very, very helpful. With that, we can get to know new projects, and you can get to know every single standard we're stick to and the way we do stuff. Define your own standards. That's basically more like a suggestion for you and your own projects, and when you want to do something open source. Define your own standards. That's really helpful. Make sure those standards can be changed in the future. So those are not rules. There's no way to say that this is going to be like this forever. So make sure you define some standards that can be changed and that can evolve in the future. And be there. Be there for people that needs that. Be there for newcomers. Be there for experts that might actually need you and need some help. Be there. Go to IRC. Replies to emails. Be part of the community. Help with the documentation. Help with the design summits and all that kind of stuff. That's really helpful. That's what we need. We need people to contribute in every single way, not just code. Code is nice, but there are more reviews than code to write. And that's it. This fucking mic. Sorry. That's not recorded.
Since you are on the please ask guys to repeat the question we received because more than
Oh, okay. So, questions? Anyone? One? Nobody? Oh.
You said you had an open design, and you also said you had like 10,000 contributors. If you encourage all those 10,000 contributors to be part of the design, doesn't that make the design process very slow?
So the question is like, if you have 10,000 contributors, does that make the design process slow? Yes, it could, totally. I mean, it's like, yeah, try to sync 10,000 Python coders. Like, that's really hard. About the design summits are obviously organized by topics. So every time you go to a design summit, there are some specific topics that you can attend to. And if you're interested, you will be there. We always expect many people to come to every single design summit, obviously. And we wish that. We want people to come. It's definitely going to be more difficult if more people is coming. But I don't know how to say. Like, we try to, it's kind of weird because the more contributors we have, the more difficult it is, but the more easier it is as well. Because if you have more contributors, more people will help you out. And if you need help, you will just shout out, like yelling, like, I need help. And somebody will say, like, I will help you. So yes, it can be harder, but it can be easier at the same time. So that's the good thing about having many contributors. Many people contributing and many people helping you out as well.
There's the divided and conquered method. All 10,000 people and work on the same stuff. Okay, and also there's the principle of meritocracy. So yes, they're all contributors, but you have people who are sort of, contribute more, and then their voices are louder. So we don't have endless discussions of things that are dragging on for weeks. Usually issues are resolved very quickly and questions are resolved very quickly. Yeah.
Any other question? Okay, you. Oh boy.
No, it's not going to be a bad one. How long does it? I could though.
Oh no.
How long does it take, like, to get an incubated project to get promoted, and how does it get decided? So if you want to have a project to get like inside OpenStack, how does it work?
So the incubation project. Okay. The incubation process is like, you have this idea and you have this project you want to work on. For example, Marconi. Marconi is queuing as a service. A really young project. We started in January. Basically, when you have this new idea, you go to StackForge, which is another organization in GitHub, and you create you basically do a review to create a repository there, and you start committing there. You can use every single tool we use for OpenStack itself for your StackForge project. So you're using the reviews process, you're using Launchpad, you're integrated with the whole flow, but you're in StackForge. That's not an integrated project. When you think your project is stable enough and mature enough, and most importantly, the API itself is stable enough and well-defined, you can opt for incubation. And doing that means that you fill up a wiki page answering some questions like, how mature is your project? What is your project about? How many people is contributing to it right now? What's the license of your project? That's very important. We use Apache license too for every single project, so that's very important. What the license is of your project, and what else? Who's going to be the PDL of that project in the fields release cycle, and all that kind of stuff. So you send an email and you ask the technical committee to review your project and get some feedback from them and see if you can be incubated. And they will do that in the next technical committee's meeting, and they will review your project and make sure your project makes sense to be part of OpenStack. So like I said, we have OpenStack started as an infrastructure as a service software, right? But right now we have many projects that are not infrastructure in there. So like Marconi itself, it's just queuing as a service, right? So they will review and make sure that having queue as a service as part of the integrated project makes sense. If that makes sense, the project gets incubated. Getting incubated means that you will have, like, I think it's 10 months. I'm not that sure though. I think it's kind of, you will have 10 months to integrate with the whole infrastructure, like creating your whole testing process and start using the review process and start using Launchpad and all that kind of stuff. Once those 10 months are over, you will, your project will be evaluated again, and if it succeeds. I mean, if the technical committee approves that, your project will come out from incubation and be an integrated project. As long as it doesn't conflict with other projects.
Currently, there's a 6-month release cycle for the upstream release. Do you see that changing or being modified in the future? And do you think that's too aggressive or just the right fit?
So, yeah, it's 6-month cycle. I don't think it is changing any soon. To be honest, I'm not see that changing any time in the future. So, I don't know why we started with a 6-month cycle because I wasn't there when the whole OpenStack started. You might have an answer for that.
Models to whatever they have in Ubuntu. So in Ubuntu, so back in the day, like we said before, like it was like Ubuntu defined like the process. So we try like to do like the 6 months release like the same as the Ubuntu release back in days. But that was like really at the beginning. Now it's like it's not true anymore. But we just keep like the 6 months release.
Yeah, I don't think that change. I don't see that changing anytime in the future because it has been working very well for us, and projects are that are integrated haven't had any issue with that yet. So there are many projects. It's very difficult to keep track of all those projects and make sure that how much of that, like 10 projects are released at the same time in the same release cycle. So maybe when there are more projects, it will be split. I don't know. I'm just brainstorming here, but I'm not sure. I don't see that changing anytime in the future.
To say, but the support release, 2 release, we support. So we support as well like 2 release, like backward compatibility, like at least for the clients and for the APIs. And you can go back for the security release as well to -2 of the current release. So there is like still support. It's not like just every 6 months.
Right.
I just want to ask about the golden members. If you could just say a few sentences, what are they and how companies can contribute to the OpenStack?
Oh, that's a really hard question for me. I'm a dev. So anyway, the golden members, if I understand that correctly, they're just the ones that paid more.
So no, it's not just that. So we went like over like Innovance went over like the process. So not everybody can go gold member like just by paying or but just being a name. You need to be able like to be an actor in OpenStack. So you need to have like resources. You need to have people contributing. Right. So when you see like on the Mochachem slide that you have like all those committers, like the top contributor, all those one are gold member as well, and the gold member contributor.
Yeah.
Platinum members.
Sorry?
Platinum members.
Yeah,
Platinum.
well, when we say like platinum, there is platinum, gold, and silver, I think.
Yeah.
That's the amount of money.
So
you pay.
basically, yeah, the whole level is like companies give money, but they also allocate resources to work on OpenStack because
there is a process to get like gold member. There is a process. It's not just like you just put money on the table.
Yeah, and that's it. No.
So people will know like if you're not like a BS company, basically you just have money at this time, and you are sustainable in the future.
Any other questions? I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Take some water.
This fucking micro keeps falling. I might want to